Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk, Live. Again, my name is Jay. I'm the host of the show. I am excited to introduce this evening, coming in across the pond, the man of the land from down under. His name is Evis Love Heath. Welcome back, Evis Love.
As always, brothers and sisters, always a pleasure. Looking forward to diving in deep.
Beautiful. Welcome back, Evis Jeff Asano, Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome back, Jeff Asano.
Good evening, everyone. Good to be here.
And of course, we have Mr. Josh Richer, residing in the Los Angeles area. Welcome back to Real Men Real Talk Live this evening, Josh Richer.
Excited for another evening of breaking it down.
There you go. So we're going to take a moment here just to welcome our viewers and guests. Welcome to tonight's episode number 127. If you should hear something that you like or love, we invite you to tap your love button on your monitor and light us up, get us hot, get us going tonight. If you should have any questions or comments that you're inspired to share, we welcome them drop them down in the comments, and we'll do our best to acknowledge as many questions that may come forward that you may have. But tonight's episode is all about breaking your cycles of escapisms. And so tonight's episode, we are going to be, are we escaping our own reality in life through running away from responsibility and problems? What is the root cause of escaping from our issues? Can you escape from your mind, body, and spirit through fantasy? Oh, I think we can answer that one pretty easily. Are you looking at the root cause of wanting to escape? What is at the root of wanting to escape? Are you avoiding silence, and why? What are you not willing to look at that's causing this internal chatter leading to escapism? Is stress always a bad thing, or can it be a tool to determine you're on a path of distractions and or destructions? Evis Love Heath, you picked this topic this week at our production meeting a couple of 24 hours ago. So I want to invite you to kick us off, light us up, and get us going on, are you breaking the cycles of escapism? What does this mean to you? And by the way, viewers, that your first time, if you're watching, we invite you to sit back, relax, and escape with us on Real Men Real Talk Live. And then, of course, we invite you to share it out with your loved ones in your own social media community. Welcome back, Christopher Peckham, coming in from snowbound Flagstaff, Arizona. And fantasy of escaping, like the great escape, he says. Taz James, welcome back. And those of you that are joining us, coming back as loyal fans, we're always grateful to see you back in our live broadcast, coming in from LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, coming in live without any editing. We come in raw because that's how we like to show up as men, Real Talk Live. Evis Love, kick us off tonight. What do you got for us?
Yeah, let's dive in, my brothers and sisters. Looking forward to diving in tonight. And look, I was actually having a look at this word last night, and escapism, an exercise of diversion from life or reality. So what are we trying to escape from, my brothers and sisters? You think just over those last couple of years, and man, if you're like me, 2022 has just gone boom. We haven't escaped a year like nothing else. But those last 2 years that were previous to that, I think we had a real good chance to understand what escapism could be all about, and whether we really need to escape anything in our lives at all. You know, for me, if we're trying to escape something within our lives, there's something that we're not feeling free within. What is that we don't feel free within? Is it the way we look at ourselves? Is it our self-esteem? Is it our work? Is it our families? Is it simply just our daily life and all of the pressures and stresses that we cannot deal with? You know, some of these things I think have all come up for us within our lives, and whether these are programmed into us or taught from an early age. One thing that I think that's really key and important with this word escapism is really understanding that it is the natural brain's function, the mind, to really escape us from feeling in stress, to escape us from feeling in trauma or pain within our life. But for me, I'm asking you tonight, my brothers and sisters, how can we change our relationship? Because we all have stresses in our life. We all go through pain. How can we change our relationship with this word escape to allow healthy escapism within our life and to really confront what we may be trying to escape from in the first place? Because at the deep and the most root core of all of this, we have to really go into those deep, dark spaces of, like I keep saying, of what we're trying to escape from. Now, whether that was trauma from the childhood, whether that's been trauma within our lives, these are the places that we've got to really dive in deep to really learn about this escapism tonight, brothers and sisters, because for me, this is going to be a deep show.
Aren't they all?
Really?
Man, there's something about this word, brothers. There's something about this word.
And good call, Ev, on the last 2 years, because you know, in the great pause when the world stopped and we were all forced to be at home with ourselves, it's kind of where well, I'm just going to speak for myself. My true colors came out, and I was uncomfortable sitting with myself. And I was in the habit of doing in my life so that I didn't have to look at certain things. And when the great pause happened, holy shit, I was stuck at home with my stuff and me. And I think that was terrifying for a lot of people. I'm certainly not the only one. We saw people, you know, and even in the comeback, people were the mass resignation and people realizing that they weren't happy and they're making changes. And that was sort of the beautiful effect, right? Is when people did look inside. But there was a lot of people out there that got stuck with themselves for a second and for a year or 2 years and were terrified. And that's sort of what we're talking about tonight, is not being comfortable with those places. But great point, Ev, for sure. We all got that one.
And what were some of your escapisms in that sort of 2 years, my brother?
Oh man, well, I didn't think I would get a chance like that, so I framed my escape as a positive, and I you know, worked on my course and my book, and I was like feverishly working because I thought I'll never get this time again where we're all getting paid to be at home. And but that was an escape. It seemed positive. Like you said, there's positive ones. I was doing stuff. I was being productive. I was creating and generating a lot of content and useful things for people. But I wasn't allowing stillness in my life at all. I was busier during that time than I was arguably at work. And I think it's because I was sitting in my room by myself and I was terrified with what I'd find if I just stopped. For sure.
Escaping all the feelings. Escaping all the feelings that come up.
There you go.
With all the feelings that would surface within us, finding ways to escape feeling all of those feelings by doing incessantly, binging TV, finding all of these places where you escape because feelings are surfacing within us. And it's a challenge to feel those feelings and be with those feelings and move to the other side of those feelings. So we create ways to escape feeling our feelings when they surface.
So here's a challenge. Then I'm gonna put forward to all three of you guys is when we are in that space where we're uncertain, but we're uncomfortable. We're dealing with whatever that discomfort feels like. Do we ever take the time to pause for a moment and ask ourselves in that moment, which part of ourselves is trying to
Mhm.
escape? Is it me, myself, or I? And I'll expand upon that in this moment. What I mean by that is it my inner child, my younger self, that little boy inside that's scared? Is it my ego, or is it my higher self? And I ask the question because this is an absolute gateway to inner freedom. Once we get into the habit of practice of pausing long enough to really go a little deep, to ask that question, how old am I feeling right now? Which part of myself is showing up in this moment? Because once we can identify, is it me, myself, or I, then we have a little bit of clarity as to what do we do with these feelings and emotions? Do we bury them? Do we reach for, a hatchet? Do we reach for a shovel? Do we dig deeper? Or do we just try to escape from the rabbit hole? So, what do you make of that, Josh, Richard?
I'm thinking back on like the years that I was escaping through various things. Work, alcohol was certainly one. I mean, all the numbing, we can hit the whole list. And I guess I was trying to think like what my feelings were at the time, like why I was afraid to look at it or sit with it like you're talking about, or even acknowledge that the feelings were there. And I think, is it that we have this fear that they're going to overtake us? Like if we looked at it, like that would be the end. Like, and so I guess, but when I finally did sit with emotions and feelings, and when I finally was able to get over that fear and to be in the discomfort and sit with it and even get curious about it. What is this? Where am I feeling it? Ask those questions that you were talking about, Jay, those beautiful questions. You start to realize that it's not going to overtake you and that you're okay. I don't know. It's always bigger in our mind and the fear leading up to it than it ever is sitting with it. And so I guess for somebody who's maybe early into a practice of trying to sit with emotions, ask questions around them, get curious, like it's not as bad as you think, or at least as I thought. But I get it. It's certain. I mean, I numbed for a decade, pretty hardcore. So I get that it's terrifying to think about sitting with them, but it's actually not as bad as it seems. I guess that's kind of where my brain went when you were talking about getting curious.
So let me ask you this then, Josh. What is your go-to now? Now that you've kind of navigated through that dark period in your life, how do you
now
process?
I get curious around them, like kind of right away. I'm sort of like, hey, what is this? And why is it painful? Is there anything underneath that? I sort of feel like you're picking up a rock and you're kind of looking underneath and you're going, what's under there? What's what is this thing? And you examine the rock from all sides and you're like, okay, this is mildly painful, but and that curiosity brings forth a lot of beautiful answers. But we just have to be comfortable sitting in discomfort, and it won't overtake you. It's not going to sink the boat. I know the waves are close to the edge of the boat, but you're not going to sink, and you could literally sit with it and ask these questions. And I think curiosity has really like shown the light in some crazy areas. And I've seen things in my life that I'm like, wow, I can't believe I've been carrying that belief or thought or thing around for all these years, and is this true? And then we get to ask ourselves questions like that, like,
Yep.
why am I carrying this thing? Is this even my own? And then I've realized that I've been carrying things from my grandpa, beliefs from him, or stories from other family members. I mean, we get to ask these questions when we're finally at peace. Well, not totally at peace, but we can finally sit with these things
Yeah.
and start to ask these questions. But it's hard.
Yeah.
I get it.
And let me ask you this, Jeff. Let me ask you this. I've been really paying attention to how quickly, like on a daily basis, how many stories do we create coming from our mind that we actually are willing to actually bet it's true. We're actually willing to put money in, but yet it's a story that we've created. It could be a story around anything and everything, around relationships, around friendships, a friendship, around something that we're thinking that we're going to have to navigate through. But I know we all go through this, but I'm very aware right now is how quickly we create a story that feels so real that we take it on as though it is truth.
Mm.
Right?
Mhm.
And then when you have this moment of clarity where you learn pretty quickly that it was just a story we made up. How often do we get hooked into the story, and then we want to escape from a story that's not even true, so we then find an escape hatch, a Houdini type of exit strategy, if I may. I mean, are you aware, Jeff, of how often you actually create stories that may or may not be true? It's just coming from past experiences.
Well, I think the key is that it's not about the stories that we have created. It's about the stories that have been created through our conditioning and our programming. One of the wonderful things that Josh just said. So for me, when those deep feelings come up, and then those stories come up, or the memories come up, or the trauma comes up, it's really the wounding of the child that's coming up. And the wonderful thing that Josh just said is then we can slip into the adult in the here and now and ask ourselves, wow, what is that? And if we could do that, then we're slipping back into being the adult in the moment by stopping and saying, I'm feeling all of these feelings. I'm feeling these memories are surfacing. These old stories are coming up, and they're looped over and over and over again, which Josh said was perfect. If we can be conscious and aware of that, and then sit back and say, wow, what is that? What is that? What's that story that I keep on hearing? What are these feelings that are coming up? And maybe get curious about them, but then allow them. If we could just differentiate between those wounds of the child and us, the adult in the here and now in 2022, then we could take a look at it. And if we have to nurture that child in the moment, we can nurture ourselves. We can mindfully talk to those wounded kids and start to reparent them. And then find out what the memory is, what the trauma might be, and what the story is. And then that will enlighten us to say, wow, is that really going on right now? But the key is, through all of this, is nurturing. And I know I've said this thousands of times on this show, but when we get into this place, when we feel like we need to escape, because the feelings are really super strong, the memories are vivid, the trauma is strong, and the first reaction we have is, I need to numb out, I need to escape this, I need to do something, I need to get away from it. We get curious about it and say, wait, hold on. what is this? And then we can begin to nurture ourselves in that moment. So as we are nurtured, because more than likely it's the trauma or the wounds of the child that was never nurtured. So if we can then nurture ourselves using whatever tools you have, talking to yourself, whatever you need to nurture yourself, as you're nurturing yourself, you'll then allow the feelings to come up while you're nurturing yourself. Whether you need to sit there and hug yourself, put your hand over your heart, your hand over your belly, talk to yourself. I love you. I honor you. I value you. What's happening here? What's going on here? And those are some of the things that we can do instead of trying to get away from it and escape it. But as we're escaping it, what we're really doing is we're suppressing and repressing it and pushing it even deeper. So every time we think we escape what's going on, we're suppressing and repressing and stuffing all of that even more deeply within us.
Yeah, beautiful, brother. And what we're talking about there, my brothers, is really the difference between escapism and avoidance. It's emotional avoidance, you know, because we have all grown up with, we felt we had to relieve or find relief as opposed to release these emotions.
Whoa, whoa. Can you repeat that again? I want to hear that one more time. So let it drop down, brother. Bring it back. Bring it back.
This is the difference, my brothers, between escapism and avoidance, emotional avoidance, where in the past we have been taught to find relief as opposed to release. We are now in the 2022. I keep going forward to say 2023, where we should have this emotional intelligence by now to identify, regulate, and learn to manage our emotions through the day, and then be able to freely express them so we don't have to be in this escapism that we find ourselves in.
I love that, Ev, and I'll share with you. That's brilliant. You really just framed it out so well, because there are days where there may be a moment where I have awareness that something's off within me. Internally, I'm feeling, I'm just feeling discomfort. You know, and then I try to determine, is it anxiety? Is it anger? Or at the deeper level, is it just sadness? Now, here's how I roll with that. I don't say I raise my hand, but like when you were in school, but as an adult, I share it. I share it with someone that I trust. You know, I say, hey, I'm kind of having a really weird day today. I'm kind of feeling sad. And for a man and or a woman that may be kind of closed off or guarded from say the feminine divine within, feminine energy, or being in touch with their emotions and feelings, which is, I was really good at that for my adult life because I got that programming and downloading as very young in my life. Real boys don't cry. But just by being able to share it and put it out to somebody else in the universe, there is a release that takes place. It takes some of the heat off of that emotion or emotions. And then, of course, the person may say to me, well, what's behind it or what's underneath it? And I may say, I'm not really sure. It may be this, it may be that. And then the next thing she may say to me is, well, what do you think? You want to hit a trail? You want to get out in the wilderness? And 9 out of 10 times, for me, movement, getting out of my head, getting out of the space within the 4 walls that man built, rather than what nature has provided for free in many applications. I may jump out into the wilderness. I may go out for a couple hours by myself. And then I'll say, you know what? I really don't feel like being alone, but I'd like to go back out on a trail. But usually for me, my antidote to that is getting out of my head and getting into my heart by disconnecting from this part of myself and going out into nature and spending some time. And it's a beautiful way for me to really process and uncover what's behind that. But for the most part, just having the awareness that this is what I'm feeling, and then to be able to express it in a place or a space where you feel safe, where you're not going to be judged. That's a huge issue for men. Women, if you are listening to me right now, listen closely, please. The last thing that your man needs in your life, if you are in a relationship, whether it be a father, a brother, a son, a partner, give them permission, encourage them to learn how to express their feelings or what they think they're feeling with one of two things. A, don't go to judgment. Don't come back at them in a way that they're receiving it as judgment. And the second request I have is don't try to rescue them, or don't try to save them from their own emotions and feelings. That we're not always asking for mommy to show up and cuddle us and snuggle and make us feel that we're okay. Sometimes we just need to be heard.
Most times.
That's all we need. That's all we need.
Most times.
Most times, all we ever want is to be heard. I was out with some friends last night. We were having this conversation. It's the great line in Pulp Fiction when Uma Thurman asked John Travolta, so when somebody's talking, are you waiting to speak or you're listening? So the key is, on the other end, 90% of the time when we have stuff going on inside of us, more than likely we just need to talk about it, release it, and we need to be heard. More than likely, we're not asking for any remedies to be fixed or anything like that. We just need to talk and release it, as Ev said before, releasing it. And another way we can release it, as Jay just said, because all of this has energy behind it. And the energy builds and builds and builds in us. And what a wonderful tool when we are feeling overwhelmed or anxious, or all of these feelings are coming up and we're sitting with them. A wonderful tool is do something, walk, get out on a hike, go for a swim, do something that will move the energy within us. That will release the energy and move the energy. And more than likely, as you're doing that, clarity will come in because you're releasing the energy. As I said before, if we try to escape it, avoid it, we're going to repress it and suppress that energy that's behind all of the feelings and everything that's coming up. We've got to move that energy.
Jason Newport, I believe, coming in from, isn't Jason from?
He's here. Is he here in the land down under, the brother? Yep.
Exactly. So shout out to Jason Newport. He says a problem shared is a problem have. But and I love that. But I do think it's important to be aware of who it is that you're leaning in to share it with, because not everybody is. You got it. How do I put this? Not everybody is open to receive it, and not everybody knows what to do with it. Now, I mentioned the female, but as a male, we also can have a male friend that is by nature, their habit is to try to rescue, or they may show up and try to minimize your emotions or feelings. And that's where we get down that slippery rabbit hole. The last thing we want is to have our feelings and emotions minimized. So,
and that,
go ahead.
That kind of leads to what you just sparked in me too. Okay. That was it was a good drop about us just needing to be heard, right? But think about it when we are not being compassionate to our own feelings. We're trying to stuff, numb, push down, ignore, change, push away, diminish, You might even villainize these feelings. Imagine what we're doing to ourselves every time with that too. We're not honoring, we're not listening, we're not valuing what we feel. We're trying to ignore, and we're villainizing these feelings and calling them bad when we're trying to get them to go away. So that is the opposite of listening to them within ourselves first, before we can even ask for someone to listen to us. And I would guess that those attacks happen way more often than even when we finally have the courage to speak it out loud, and then somebody outside of us doesn't even receive it well. At least it was for me.
Yeah.
I
love that. Thank you,
that
Josh.
stuff so hard, and I villainized all of it and shamed all of it. And that's the opposite of loving ourselves and honoring our feelings and letting things come up and being okay with sitting with them. So maybe that's even the first step before everything, is just being able to look at them and let them be. And feelings are energy, like Jeff said beautifully.
Yeah.
It's
I want to
just
acknowledge.
energy.
I want to acknowledge Taz right here, and I want to invite you, Josh, to share your perspective. He says, "I wish I could cry. As a kid, I forced myself to not cry by age 10. Not accepted. Now I can cry." What do you make of that, Josh? Do you have any insights on perhaps a tip, trick, or tool on how Taz can open up the floodgates so that he can have a new relationship with tears?
Come join us on an episode. We always cry.
That'll work.
But what is special in this space, and why I think we do feel free to cry here, is because it's safe. There's no judgment from you, Jay, Ev, Jeff. When I look at your faces and I'm bawling with some realization that hit me that week, I know that it's safe here and it's okay here. And so, I don't know, Taz, do you have friends? And I know it's tough. We got to test the market, right? Make sure it's safe. You just kind of dipping a toe in the pond, making sure the water's not too cold. It's easy here because we've openly said to each other, this is a safe space and I love you. And I get it, in the real world, that's harder to tell. And you can't just have those talks with everybody and say, I don't know, Jeff, it looks like you got something to add.
Well, the first question I would ask you, Taz, is why can't you cry?
I think, yeah.
What's
What's
the reason why you can't cry? What's underneath that?
I mean, he's saying as a kid he was forced not to, or he's forced, so that would be a lot of the problem.
Yeah.
But to me, brother, it is being able to have full self-acceptance. And we have to accept ourselves before we can accept others, and just understand, and understand that these beautiful things we call tears are simply a natural part of who we are as a human being. So it's full acceptance of all of these emotions and feelings we're talking about here tonight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will share with you that I think I hadn't cried for many decades. And it wasn't until I was early on in my own journey of coming home to myself that the tears started to flow. And for me, one of the gateways to giving myself permission to have that experience was I had a story around writing, journaling. We call it journaling or writing. But if we break it down, it was really just learning how to tap into my own emotions and feelings. And for me, the portal initially was through writing. And I didn't like to write. See, I had a story around, I had journals and I couldn't write in them. Why? Because I had an old attachment to my penmanship from when I was a kid. And my penmanship is still that kid in elementary school or grade school, right? But, and I kept being told, start to write, grab a pen or a pencil and start. And I had a block around that because of an old wound around my penmanship and how I was judged for that. And so one day I was literally at the beach on my beach cruiser riding, and I get a download, I get a hit, an intuitive hit that says, pull over right now, pull out your phone, open up your note app, and start typing. Now, typing I can do because I did that, as an adult. I was like, really? And I just trusted in that moment to do that. And that's exactly what I did. And I was like, I couldn't believe how it just started to flow out, emotions and feelings around a specific topic. And I don't remember the first time I wrote in my notes, but I know this, a couple of days later, I was back on a bike path and I get another intuitive hit, which is, it's time to pull over. It's time to pull over and start expressing your feelings through writing. And then the second thing that happened, the second step in that process, Taz, was I got another intuitive hit that said, now that you're done writing it, read it out loud to yourself. Read it out loud. And I said, okay, I guess I could do that. And I read out loud what I had just written. And for me, that was the gateway. The floodgates opened up. Just hearing and feeling it come through my throat, my voice, hearing my voice speak the words was very emotional in that moment. And I began to cry. And I was so excited to have that experience because I hadn't had that in a long time. And so for me, that was a beautiful way to give myself permission. And then I've shared this before in a show, and I'll just briefly say is that once the tears started to come, Taz, they weren't stopping. They would just keep flowing almost pretty much daily. And then at one point I asked myself, where are these tears coming from? What is the symbolism or the metaphor for these tears? And the conclusion I came to, this awareness, was that my soul or my heart space was frozen like a block of ice because I had turned it off years and years ago, like you had, Taz, in home. And I realized for me, the metaphor was that the tears was my soul thawing out. And once I had that awareness, I felt such incredible freedom. And then I went to being fearful of crying to being fearful of the tears drying up. I realized that I didn't want the tears to dry up because I understood that the tears was a way for me to grieve the pain that I'd been holding on to in my life from my childhood. And even as an adult, in being in relationships that were hurtful and sad. Hurtful to the soul. And so it was a beautiful way to give myself permission to just release, as you said. What do you make of that, Jeff? What are you hearing?
I don't know. You're talking to somebody who cries every day, whether it's tears of joy. I mean, yeah. I mean, I learned to allow myself to do that, coming from, a childhood where if my mother saw me doing that, it was like, stop crying. And it's a release. It's like laughter.
Yeah.
When you're laughing, you're releasing. When you're screaming and yelling, you're releasing. When you're crying, you're releasing. You're releasing the energy, and it comes in the form of emotional upheaval, and the tears come. It can be a wonderful release and a wonderful surrender to what's going on. Like I said, my question would be, what's underneath the why you can't cry? And to start unpacking that. Shame. The shame might have been so configured within your nervous system so deeply that that shame that you might not even realize that's there is the reason why you can't cry. That shame is just so embedded in your nervous system. I'm not really sure. That's why I just said,
Yeah.
ask the question, why?
It's funny. I had a realization last week after a meditation that the meditation teacher and in the room, a lot of people were stuck on talking about anger. And I'll get to why this is relevant here in a second, but life is this spectrum of emotions, right? Imagine if you only ever felt 2 or 3. There's just no frame of reference then, right? If you felt joy all the time, joy would just become normal. And we need pain to give joy a framework and to give joy that
Contrast.
sense, thank you. That was the word I was looking for, that contrast. For so long, I got afraid of my emotions that I had fear and joy. And it was fear, drugs, fear, alcohol, fear, friends, fear, sex, fear. I stuck in these 2, and the world didn't have the color, the framework, and the full experience of life. So we need them all to make each one different and special and to give us that contrast in life. And so, yeah, when we shut down to them, including crying, Jeff, I'm with you. I cried yesterday out of happiness and gratitude, and it's the greatest thing to be able to cry in joy. So, yeah, there's every single one. And hey, we're here on this earth. As far as we know, we only get one go at this. I want to experience it all. I want the full spectrum, the full colors of all the rainbow. I want to feel everything so that everything else has that contrast and that difference. And it makes the joy amazing when you're there, when you've worked hard for it and overcome some pain. It makes it that much better. It gives it that vibrance and that fullness. I don't know. I got off track a little bit. But.
No, it's all good. I want to shift gears right now. I want to first of all acknowledge the 3 of you. So far tonight's been a beautiful show. It's hard to believe we're at 42 minutes in.
Already?
Yeah, we're 42 minutes in. But I want to shift gears here and ask this question: Is escapism ever a positive thing? And can it start out as a positive thing, and then it can turn negative? What's your take on that?
We need to have a healthy escape within our life, my brothers and sisters. And that's what I mentioned at the start of this show, because really what I find the difference in between escapism and avoidance is the time delayed in between some of these things that are worrying, troubling, or causing us harm or grief. So if we can have healthy escapes, I call them an escape break, where there might be something just absolutely flooding your mind and you become so stressed out within your brain that you try and fix this problem. You know, the brain wants to fix the problem for you and quickly find the solution. But I always say 4 R's on this one. How about we take a rest? How about we go away, we rest, we recharge, reflect, and then revisit what we felt we needed to find the solution to. So for me, a healthy escape would mean going for a quick rest, going for a walk on country, going to do some breathing, going to listen to some good music, man, going to watch something funny, whatever gets you on that higher vibe, to then, like Jay was mentioning at the start of the show as well, give you more clarity to go back in and then really start to identify what we're trying to escape from in the first place. So there are many healthy escapes for us, my brothers and sisters. For me, it's the short breaks that are really key for a healthy escape.
Tell me more. What does that look like? A short escape, you said?
Yeah, it could be a short escape. So
Like
short
what?
escape. Are you going away? You might have to move away from the environment that you're currently in that's causing you the stress or the harm,
Mm-hmm.
whatever may have triggered you. Because that's the number one thing our cells are really vibrating on first is the environment. So
There you
pull
go.
yourself from that environment, go outdoors like we talk about, do a little bit of breath work, or just be around a positive vibration, which is going to allow you to rest this mind. At the end of the day, my brothers and sisters, all of this stuff is mental that you're trying to escape.
There you go.
So this mind become a land mind or it become your gold mind. Remember that.
Oh, I love that. Have you on fire tonight, dude? From
Landmine
landmine to
or
a
your
gold mine.
gold
Wow.
mind.
It's
And
planting
that
seeds, brothers, planting good seeds.
reminds me something too, Ev, that I mean, we often forget that we do have control in that process, right? I've reminded myself at night when I've started to worry about something and I'm laying in bed trying to settle down and I find myself spinning on something about tomorrow, the next day, some worry. I've literally said, can I put this problem down for the moment? And I literally imagine myself putting it on my nightstand. And I ask myself, will this problem be here in the morning and still be relevant in the morning? Basically asking, do I need to solve this right now?
Well, hold on.
And if the answer is no,
go ahead, John. 1 sec, John. I want to know, what are the dimensions of that nightstand?
it's tiny, man. I don't have a big nightstand at all.
Okay, you can go on now. I was just curious.
So I asked myself, will this problem still be relevant in the morning? And do I need to solve this now? The answer is always no, by the way. And so I asked myself, can I put this down for the evening? And I promise it'll be right there where I can pick it up first thing in the morning. And it's a great practice to get out of my head and really stop that spinning and that cycling of the problem solving and everything it's trying to do. And so I imagine myself putting it down, and then I rarely ever forget to pick or remember to pick it up in the morning. Sometimes I do, and I'm like, okay, cool, there it is. Now I can worry about this again. But
that is a healthy escape, brother. Love it. That's visualization. Visualization 101.
I know
man.
you're huge on that, Ev.
Oh man, it's powerful, brother.
Yeah. But there's lots of little ways. Jeff, you were talking about just getting out and moving. I mean, that's brilliant. It's perfect.
Yeah, because we could just more than likely we're always just going recycling the same story, that recycling. As I said before, if we could just be conscious and aware of that, and right then and there go, wow, what do I need right now? More than likely you just need to shift something. Great thing is just get up, go out for a walk.
Yeah. What about silence? Is silence something that we avoid or something that we embrace?
Embrace. It can become a problem for people if they sit in too much silence where they become isolated.
Right.
But silence and solitude, that's the name of the game, brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Most people abhor silence because it's deafening.
You were sharing, Jeff, that your mom had turned on every TV in every room when she got up in the morning, right?
Yeah, she did. She would turn the TV on, right? I mean, get up, TV goes on. She's doing things, doing. I would get in the car with my mother and she would just keep on talking, because my mother just didn't know how to just be in silence for 30 seconds. And allow that, because it was deafening to her. She wouldn't know what to do with it, because she would then have to sit and be with whatever is going on within her. So all she ever did was avoid it by doing, talking, watching TV, distractions. So, folks, how are you distracting yourself from yourself? What are you using to distract yourself? Are you getting up in the morning and the first thing you're doing is putting on the television set?
What's interesting,
yeah.
what just came forward for me real quick, Josh, is that we've been really focused on escapism as a harmful or a negative experience in life. But what if we look at it as can be a positive in a sense of, if let's say you're an obsessive thought about something that's not serving you, something that you're fearful of, or whether it be something for the future or something from the past.
Mm.
So as I shared, for me, stepping out of artificial light and moving into natural light outdoors, for me, is a form of escapism.
Mm.
But it's not, it's a form of escapism to get me out of my head. So it doesn't always have to have that negative connotation to it. It just depends on the choices we make, and what is the intention of the escape.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ev said it earlier, Jay.
Yeah.
Healthy escapism.
Mm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interrupting that story, interrupting that loop, interrupting what's going on in the moment, and escape it healthfully by going out in nature for a walk.
So let me ask you this, guys. Then, all right. So if you are a man and you're married or in a relationship, and you work 12 plus hours a day, is that a form of escapism?
Yep.
I'm a man, but I'm not married in a relationship. So
what are we escaping from? What is it that we're using work as a form of avoidance from dealing with challenges perhaps at home that we have to go home to face anyway?
Mm.
could be.
Yeah, that's going into workaholism, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that's the other escapism.
Yeah, working 12, 13 hours a day, so that's your escape from whatever other parts of your life that aren't comfortable for you.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we change our relationship, let's say, with that strategy, using work as an example? Because at the end of the day, we still have to face whatever it is that we're trying to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
If we're in, let's say, if we're in a relationship that's got some heaviness to it, or emotions that aren't serving us, and so we're trying to avoid it, but eventually we got to come home. How do we change our relationship, let's say, with work, so that we don't use it as that form of escapism, because eventually we still have to face it?
Mm.
What do you make of that, Ev? How do we navigate through that?
Well, the thing for me, brother, there's a few things that we cannot escape in our daily lives. And, one of those things for me is your truth. And for me, your truth wraps around always your values, your morals, and your beliefs. So if you go back to values, and look, I always ask this when I do workshops, and, I try to get brothers and sisters to identify their values or revisit them. Many of them will say family or beloved, loved one. But how can you tell me that is a value of your top 5 values within your life if you're pumping 12, 13, 15 plus hours a day on your work and no time for your family, your beloved, or your friends? So go back to your truth. It's something that you cannot escape, and that truth should always be wrapped around those values, morals, and beliefs.
I did that same exact exercise in a workshop one time, Ev. They had us write down what are our top core values, and then they had us do that. We, sat with it for a while, and then we all came up with our nice little list. And then they said, and how much importance are you putting on those in your life right now? And well, I think like one made my top 5 as far as importance. I valued family, health, all these things, and because those are the things that you can't live without, right? Because those connections, your health, all of these things. And then what importance was I putting on them? Didn't even make the list. Yeah. It's a crazy exercise. It's a good one, Ev.
Victoria Bennett coming in from Sedona, Arizona. Yeah, I know that city. She says, being alone, not in a relationship, can be a form of escapism.
Yep.
Now, it just depends. I think it just depends. I think that's a brilliant statement she makes. It can be a form of escapism if we're intentionally avoiding relationships because we've been stung or we've been hurt. We wall up, and it's like, you know what? It's easier just to be alone and be single than be in a relationship with pain or complications and disrespect and dishonor. And that's true. However, I also believe that being alone, not in a relationship, can be a healthy choice if you are making a decision that this is your window of time to do some significant healing for yourself. If you're, instead of investing in a relationship outside of yourself and aligning from an energetic standpoint with someone that's maybe you're not ready to be in a relationship with because neither one of you have done enough work of the healing from our childhood or from our younger years. So in that moment, it can be actually a positive choice to make. It not necessarily is escapism. It's just learning how to first have that relationship, a healthier relationship with yourself, before you jump into another painful, harmful, toxic, disrespecting and dishonoring relationship, where once again that little girl within is triggered, or that little boy within is triggered. So how do we find
that
balance?
Goes to show,
yeah.
That goes to show, like, what are the drivers underneath, right? Those decisions, like your decision to be alone. Is it because you're afraid of being hurt, or is it because you're truly wanting to give to yourself and practice self-love and really just invest time in you? And I think a good way of checking in on yourself, where your decisions are with these escapes, right? Are they healthy or unhealthy? Is ask yourself, are you making this choice out of fear or out of love?
There you go.
And there's your answer. If you're making the choice to work because you're afraid of being home because your relationship at home is falling apart, it's not healthy. If you're working to save the relationship because you think money is going to save the relationship, well, that's based on fear. Not healthy. So, fear, love, what is it?
There you go.
What's behind it?
Beautiful. I love that.
Boom.
As we get close to the hour power here, the power hour here. Anyone have any of you guys want to share any additional perspectives or tips, tricks, and tools on how to break the cycle of escapism? And we've shared some already tonight, but is there anything Evis, I also heard you mention music. Music has been a power tool in my journey. I tapped into music that I hadn't tapped into ever in my life, because I didn't feel safe to tap into the music genres and the music style that I liked without feeling judgment in my past. But today I have freedom. I choose what I want to listen to, and I'm at peace with it. And the music that I listen to calms me down. It lowers my heart rate, lowers my blood pressure. It brings me into this incredible space of, most of the time, gratitude. And sometimes it even brings me to tears, get tears of gratitude. So it really can be a power tool if you use it and you don't abuse it.
Mm.
Any other tools come up for you guys that you'd like to share? Jeff, how about you? You've been quiet for a little bit here. What's on your mind? What's in your heart?
I don't know. I mean, the main thing for me, and I said it earlier in the show, is nurturing yourself where you are, loving yourself where you are. Whatever is going on, what's ever happening, nurture that little girl or that little boy inside could be screaming out in pain, and begin from there. Begin to nurture that as opposed to avoiding it and escaping it. Because more than likely, and I said it earlier in the show, what's screaming out is a wounded little boy or little girl inside of you who's been programmed, conditioned, who's been told a story, who's been shamed, who's been judged, and all of that good stuff. And it's coming to the surface so you can heal it and release it. But in order for us to do that, we've got to nurture ourselves. Because more than likely, and I said it earlier, that little boy and that little girl never received any nurturing from mom and dad.
Beautiful, Jeff.
It's one of my
Beautiful
biggest
practice.
challenges.
Oge Quiras says, and please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name exactly correctly, but you know who you are. She says, self-compassion, yes, to be mindful that whatever situation we are living is going to finish soon. So what does that mean to you, Josh? What are you receiving, and how do you interpret that?
You know what? Josh said that before. When Josh was saying, and I'll paraphrase, this is not going to last.
They're all temporary.
Yeah.
Even the good feelings.
Right.
Vacation doesn't last forever.
Right.
Neither does your pain.
Yeah.
It all ends.
And eventually you have to go home from work. You can't stay there 24/7. You know, that will end. That's got to end too.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, Ev, you want to close us out tonight with some closing thoughts?
Yeah, why not, brothers? Another deep show, and I think there's enough tools there to really understand that healthy escapism isn't such a bad thing, and I think we all need it in our daily lives, because as we've dived in deep, particularly around the traumatic situations that may have happened in most of our lives, if you're in the collective right now, that are coming up on the surface, man. We're in eclipse season, brothers and sisters. We got another eclipse coming up next week. We're having all these beautiful opportunities not to have to escape from anything. If you were able to let go and release some of these emotions and feelings that may have been sitting in those dark places within your life up until this point. But one thing that I just really want to finish on to, my brothers and sisters, and, you know, Brother Josh Richard always said this beautifully, and that's really understanding that we are not our emotions. We're not our feelings. We're not even our thoughts. We're not even our problems. The difference is, my brothers and sisters, is that we have a choice to face them or not. So on that note, my brothers and sisters, I hope that's a clear message.
Well, it's clear to me. I just got chills. And I always know what that means. I want to acknowledge many viewers that are welcome back for either coming back after taking a hiatus from the podcast. I also want to acknowledge, welcome Leslie Gomez Martinez, coming in from Cancun, Mexico, I believe, is where you reside, from affiliated with Hope for Cancer. I've got someone that I care very deeply about that is there right now, probably wrapping up close to 3 weeks there. Thank you for joining us this evening on Real Men Real Talk Live. I also want to just acknowledge all of you that have had the courage to share comments tonight and show up right on time. We love you, and we're so grateful that you join us week after week. and you provide us the inspiration to keep coming back and creating new episodes each week. If at any time as a viewer you have an episode that is dear to your heart and you'd like us to explore or dive into, just drop any one of us for a note in Messenger on the Messenger app, and we'll do our best to review it and acknowledge you and definitely consider adding it to a future podcast. And of course, we have those coming in from overseas. Gillian Bowie coming in from Scotland. It's 3 a.m. We want to talk about commitment to this podcast. We just absolutely right appreciate you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on Real Men Real Talk Live. And I just want to say that if you're in pain and you're struggling, slow down and ask yourself why. What is it in my life that I have not been willing to face a fear due to fear? And what is preventing me from breaking free of these cycles of escapism that are no longer helpful but are harming me? And what it takes is courage. What it takes is your willingness to show up and grow up and become the person that you were born to be, not the person that maybe you become. And if that's not who you are at your core, at your heart, at your soul, and it's time to show up for that little boy or little girl within, learn how to hold them, learn how to parent them, learn how to honor them, learn how to respect them, learn how to protect them, and most importantly, learn how to love them without judgment and with unconditional love. And with that, I love you guys.
Love you too. All of you.
Much
We'll
love,
see you
brother.
next week on Real Men, Real Talk.